All right. Hello, honors research track folks. As you can tell, probably by the tree behind me, I'm recording this over winter break. But as we start the quarter, I want to hit the ground running. So, in order to maximize our time in class, there will be a series of these video lectures just to kind of help contextualize things. So, let's start with an overall timeline, just so you can kind of begin to wrap your head around what's going on here. So, January 8th is the beginning of the quarter. The 12th, or maybe a little bit later, by the end of week 2, your mentor contracts are going to be due. Ideally by the 12th, but if you can't get it in by then, I'm going to set the actual due date as the following Friday. Now, February 8th is when your application to the undergraduate symposium is due, and there's nothing that I can do to change that. So if you don't hit that deadline, that's it. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to petition the UW or get them to accept your application after that due date. So it's very, 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 very important that you have everything ready to go, turned in. You're taking time to account for any possible technical difficulties or whatnot. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, how that process is going to work. 3/15, so March 15th, your lit review is going to be due. And so it creates an interesting dynamic because the first part of the quarter, we're really going to be focusing on writing an abstract, getting ready for the symposium. But the second half of the quarter will really be focused on the lit review. And then after winter quarter, so in spring quarter, May 17th is the UW Undergraduate Research Symposium at the UW in Seattle. And we can talk more logistics about that too. But just to give you an overall idea of the time frame. So some things to kind of consider. There are 3 major assignments due this quarter. Now there's some minor assignments as well. And the minor assignments, just like last quarter, are intended to scaffold or get you ready for these things. So the first one is a mentor contract. Again, hopefully you can turn it in week 1, if not week 2 at the latest. The abstract is the other major component, and we'll do a couple iterations of that. And then the literature review, of course, at the end of the quarter. And again, all of the minor assignments will lead up to that. Now, a couple of things about kind of what to expect this quarter, because it's going to be different. I mean, I know that the research track is already different from other classes you've taken, but just things to bear in mind as we get started. So the first one, and it's probably the most important, is that this is a much more self-guided quarter, where while there are check-ins and assignments, a lot of our work, at least in class, I hope is going to be more generative, more talking through examples, things like that, so that you are well prepared both for the abstract and the lit review. But since we're only meeting once a week for 2 hours, that's not a whole lot of time. So you are going to need to kind of plan accordingly. You're going to be working independently to continue your research. So whatever things that you found in fall quarter, whatever you found over winter break, your research is not over yet. It's called the research track, right? So every quarter should incorporate some additional element of research, even after your lit review is due. In the first part of spring quarter, you're probably still going to be conducting last minute research just to prepare for the symposium. You're going to be working mostly with your mentor. You already know how this works, and we can talk through that as well, either in this presentation or in a future one. The goal, as I mentioned earlier, is to complete the abstract first and then the literature review. And that might seem a little bit strange, since usually an abstract explains what a paper is about. But what I want you to kind of keep in mind is that the UW is aware that you haven't completed all your research yet. That abstract is just a part of the application, and I'll unpack that a little bit more later in this video too. So some suggestions, especially based on my discussions with former research track students: try and set aside time each week to research. Consider using a planner or a calendar to map out that research. Again, we talked about this in fall quarter, maybe 15 minutes a day, but you need to have that time, because it's such a labor intensive process to find good sources, to read those sources, to think about how you're going to synthesize those sources. Let us, that is me, I haven't changed this, but previously I co-taught this class, but let me know and your mentor know as soon as you hit a roadblock. If you get stuck with anything, you have an existential crisis, you need to let me know and your mentor know as soon as possible. And make sure it's both. It's not just me and not your mentor, not just your mentor and not me. The more people we can have troubleshooting, the better. And then remember that the other resources are available to you, right? You have other instructors, other classmates, you have the library. So if you're working on a project in psychology, you have your mentor, but you can also ask the other psychology professors. That would help you, again, round things out so that you have more options. Okay, so let's kind of focus specifically on the UW Undergraduate Research Symposium. So the UGRS, which is a weird acronym. I don't know if it's UGS or how we pronounce that. But I want to explore a little bit about what a symposium is in general and what it is specifically at the UW. So a lot of this first presentation is going to feel like we're kind of looping back on things, and that's by design. But I want to go back to due dates for a second, right? We started out with that timeline. So let's look at each one of those and let's unpack each one a little bit. So the first big date that you want to have in mind, mark your calendar, circle it, is February 8th, 2024. That is the due date for your application to the symposium. You're going to be turning in your abstract, your application. You'll need an entry code from me, and you're going to need your mentor's approval and contact info. So just make sure you've got all that. We'll talk about the abstract, both in this presentation and in class. The application I haven't seen because I've never applied to the UW Undergraduate Research Symposium, but I understand it's pretty straightforward. Now, the entry code is important. Without an entry code, you won't be able to register. And I do know that sometimes there are hiccups. So by the time I give you your entry code, if it does not work for any reason at all, you need to contact me and I will contact the UW. You will not get your entry codes until we have finalized your abstract. So again, this is why you're not going to be working on your abstract up until the very last minute. You're going to have your abstract ready to go before that final due date. All right. Then once you have submitted that, you're going to do revisions of your abstract, most likely. And I have another slide that gives the UW's breakdown. What generally happens, and there are a couple of students every year who have no required revisions, but in general, what will happen, probably to 90% of you, is that the UW will say, we like your abstract, we need you to do these changes. And it's not always super clear exactly what they want you to do. It might say remove jargon or focus on outcomes or something like that. So it's not super specific revisions that they'll say that they want, but you have a finite period of time. And I don't think that there's a mechanism for you to ask for clarity. So we're just going to have to do best guess on that. And part of those revisions will be talking to your mentor, talking to me, talking to your classmates to make sure that you've reviewed it, revised it, and then resubmitted. In order to do that, you're going to need approval from your mentor for this as well. And I would strongly recommend, and I might require you to have approval from me before you can resubmit. Now, just a little aside on that, that's not me trying to micromanage. It's just trying to make sure that you have the best possible abstract and that we know that once those revisions are turned in, you're good to go. Okay, so for the actual symposium on May 17th, 2024, you've still got some things that you need to do, and this will be part of class as well. You're going to need to design, print, and present your poster at the UW. So there are, and we'll look at this in future weeks, specific formats for the poster. In fact, it'll be early spring quarter when we start to talk about poster format. So we won't really talk about it this quarter. I just want it to be in your head. You're going to have to design that poster. You're going to have to print it. Unfortunately, we can't print them on campus because it's a strange size that we can't print here on campus. And unfortunately, you're also going to have to pay for that printing. I believe that students last year said it was around $40 for a basic color print of the poster, which comes rolled up. If you want it on some sort of backing board, that might run you up to $100 or so. Now, you don't have to put it on a backing board. That's just a thing that keeps it kind of more like a picture frame so that it's all flat and neat. And then you're going to present that poster to the UW. And last year, students either had to drop off their poster the day before the symposium or super early in the morning of the symposium. And that's entirely up to you. What will basically happen is you'll drop off your poster, you'll turn it over to the UW, they'll put it on whatever easel they have set up for your presentation. You're going to be assigned a time slot of 2 hours and a location. Last year, students didn't know what time slot or what location, I think, until the day of. So just be aware of that. You're probably going to need to be there all day. It's really exciting. It's also very intellectually and physically draining. And then the check-in for that is usually a few hours before the event starts. So I want to say that was about 8 o'clock in the morning on that Friday last year. Now, as I mentioned, this is the timeline that I put together, but the UW has one as well. So I want to look at that because some of you may go look at it on your own. I want to talk through it. So January 3rd, applications open. Now, as I mentioned, you're going to need your application code, your entry code from me. And I'm not going to be giving those to you right away. As of the recording of this, I don't have them yet, but it's not quite January 3rd. February 8th, applications are due, right? And it does say asterisk, the deadline results in heavy website traffic. Attempt to submit your application as soon as practicable. So you can submit prior to that. And again, we'll go through that process, what that looks like. March 22nd, you're going to receive decisions and suggestions for revision. And here it actually says, different from the last couple of years, there's a big window. So March 22nd to April 8th, you're going to have a revision window, and it does say deadlines for revisions may vary. So you may get your comments back after March 22nd. I wouldn't anticipate that you're going to get your revisions right on the 22nd. And then the deadline to confirm is April 14th, and then May 17th is the actual symposium itself. Okay. So let's just briefly, at least, talk about what a symposium is. There's been some confusion in the past among different students who weren't exactly sure what the process or the purpose of the symposium was. So we're going to start broadly, and we'll start with the reading that I've assigned. So this first one's from Ex Ordo, and they say symposiums is also an acceptable plural, and conferences are both formal gatherings of scholars and researchers where attendees present their work, hear others speak, and discuss the latest developments within their field. Now, this is an undergraduate research symposium, so it's well established that we know that people are not already experts or PhDs in their field, which is part of why we have mentors. But it is this place that's like they say, a formal gathering of people to discuss, hey, this is what I'm working on. And the range of topics is incredibly broad. That said, if last year was any indication, there are going to be a ton of bio and medical research projects. So Oxford Abstracts has this little quote, and this is also from one of our readings. The main purpose for symposium was for the men, typically the highest class of Greek society, to come together and discuss various topics which included politics, philosophy, and the latest news and poetry. Et voila, symposiums were born, right? So we can thank the Greeks for this. Again, the word symposium, you should be thinking probably a Greek origin. But again, this idea that a symposium is a way for us to get together, share ideas, look at research, look at developments within a given field. Now, if we go to the UW website, here's the sort of pop-out highlight that they have. Each year, nearly 1,000 students from all 3 UW campuses and other local institutions, read Shoreline, present their research spanning over 100 disciplines. Undergraduates present work from astronomy to visual arts, international studies to psychology, anthropology to bioengineering, and just about everything in between. Now, last year, there was sort of a keynote opening speech, and they said that the UW Symposium is one of the biggest in the country. So it's not just that you're attending a symposium, but you are attending a very well-known undergraduate research symposium, which is pretty freaking awesome in my opinion. Okay. So I think what I'll do is I'll just end with this last bet, which is that for the symposium, I assume that most of you, if not all of you, will be doing the poster presentation. Again, those are 2-hour blocks where you are standing by your poster, and there are advantages and disadvantages of this. So the first maybe disadvantage is that you don't know who's going to stop by and talk to you. It might be a professor. It might be a graduate student, another undergraduate student. It could just be a member of the community because this is an event that is open to the public. So that is a potential downside, is that we don't exactly know our audience. We don't know what their expertise is, right? So you could be a professor in your field who studies what you're researching, which could be a little intimidating, but it could also just be an undergraduate who is studying in a completely different field and they just happen to be interested in your topic. Now, the sort of advantage to that is that it's informal in nature. So it's a little bit more of a conversation. So you might have your short, 1 minute, 2 minute elevator pitch that kind of introduces your topic. But from there, whoever is stopping by to talk to you is going to ask you questions, and you're going to be able to respond in a more fluid nature, drawing from all of the research that you've done. So again, the more research you've done, the more you know about your topic, the easier it's going to be to sort of navigate those different conversations. All right, so I'll go ahead and end this video here. If you have questions, comments, concerns, jokes, memes, or recipes, let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to y'all soon.